viewers, welcome to the session on barriers to listening. I am Sunil Philip, working as an assistant professor of English in the Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, and I'm glad to present this session on barriers to listening. We are doing this under the main topic, soft skills and interpersonal communication, barriers to listening. Here we go. Well, before we touch these barriers of listening, what are the rules of good listening, or what are the rules for good listening? Well, here it is mentioned as stop talking. By the word stop talking, we do not mean to say, or I don't mean to say you should not talk. That means God has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen more and talk less. In terms of this listening skill, which is a receptive skill, which is not a passive skill, definitely, it's an active skill, and it's a receptive skill. That means we receive the messages, the sounds that are produced by the speaker. For example, while I'm talking to you on this camera, on this channel, you're all receiving the sounds or the message. You're receiving the message that is produced by the speaker. Therefore, hence, listening is a receptive skill. All right. And stop thinking. By the word stop thinking here, let there be no distractions. Let your mind be focused on what is being said. It should be undivided listening. Listening with undivided attention. That means there is also something called as divided attention. When we listen to something, we listen only half of it, not the full of it. Therefore, the listening should be done in English. We also have some an acronym or a kind of short form of the CID is concentration, interest, and dedication. So listen with full concentration, listen with full attention, and let your interest be undivided. Let your interest be completely focused. And finally, let your listening be dedicated listening. Focus or dedicate yourself to the listening process so that there are no distractions, deviations in the process of listening. Okay, fine. The third one in the rules for good listening is remove distractions. We have discussed it just now. It can be something that you carry maybe from your home. It may be your psychological distractions, physical distractions. It may be your mental distractions. Maybe because your mood is off, you're not in a very active mode to listen properly. Try to overcome them. Try to fight those distractions. Try to be an attentive listener, an active listener, so that you understand the complete gist of the message that is spoken, or the message that is delivered. Do not let your mind wander. Now, wandering mind is something like, some of them, they suffer from attention deficit disorder. It's called as ADD. I am writing it on the screen for the convenience of all of you. ADD or ADHD. Attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. When people cannot focus on what is being said, they suffer from this kind of disorder, attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They are more into so many things and they cannot focus on whatever is being said properly. So one should remove such distractions and one should not let his or her mind wander. It should not be something like body present and mind absent. Some of the students, when they sit in the classroom, this is the biggest barrier that they face when they sit in the classroom. That is, their mind is, they are physically present there, but the mind is wandering somewhere here and there. That means body present, mind absent is a common thing that saying that we generally say. Your listening should not be something like that. Okay, fine. Then, do not prejudge. Prejudging is not good. Don't sit with a preconceived notion there in front of the speaker. Do not judge the speaker before he finishes his speaking. completely listen to the text, listen to the message, and then come to conclusion, and then try to evaluate or analyze the spoken text or the spoken message. But this is also called as a prejudice. 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 What is that? Prejudice is a prejudice. It's a kind of preconceived notion. That means before you have actually, listened to that, you form a preconceived notion about it. That is, you should not listen with such kind of, attitude. You should not listen with such kind of, approach. Okay, fine. And then be patient. Patience matters. Patience matters. You see, lack of patience at times results in half listening, or the message message that is not understood properly, message that is not properly analyzed and evaluated properly. Then empathize with the speaker. What is empathizing with the speaker? Stepping into the shoes of the speaker, understanding the position of the speaker. You think from the perspective of the speaker. That is empathize. Then what is the difference between empathy and sympathy? Empathy is understanding the opposite person's position. Sympathy is like when you show mercy or pity on someone. That is sympathy. Then take notes. Note-taking is a wonderful skill. Note-taking skill or note-making skill. Well, what is note-taking skill? Simultaneously, while you listen to the speaker, your cognition, your affective, your psychomotor should work simultaneously. That means your head, heart, and hand coordination should take place. You should never sit there with with kind of half attention. Always ensure that you take your notes while listening to the speaker. Note-taking skills help you to develop your handwriting. It helps you to develop your knowledge of spellings. It helps you to develop your knowledge of syntax, subject-verb agreement, concord or syntax, subject-verb agreement. It also helps you not to miss the important points that the lecturer or the professor has mentioned in the classroom or during the course of his lecture. Okay, fine. Let me take you to the rest of the slides in our discussion. Well, what is listening in the first place? It's a process of receiving, interpreting, and reacting to a message received from the speaker. According to management guru Tom Peters, listening is an essential management and leadership skill. It's an essential management skill. It's an essential leadership skill. A person who is a poor listener cannot be an effective and efficient leader, because by listening carefully, by listening in a focused and attentive manner, he will judge the person's caliber and potential. He will discern the validity of the message. The reliability of the message or the validity of the message can be properly discerned, can be properly analyzed or evaluated by focused listening, by active listening. Okay, fine. That will help him become an effective leader, efficient leader, productive leader. All right. Then listening cannot be done only by ears. One can listen with their eyes, sense, mind, heart, and imagination. That means you can also listen with your eyes. While observing the person, you can listen. That means by focusing attention on the body language of the speaker, non-verbal communication of the speaker, facial expressions, emotions, gestures, ideas, emoticons, all these things, when you pay attention, when you actually focus your attention on the facial expressions of the speaker, that means you also listen with your eyes, with your sense, with your mind, with your heart, with your imagination. All these things, they go into the process of listening. Okay, fine. Every good conversation starts with good listening. Now, there are 6 stages of listening that are mentioned here. Well, I also have a password for this. You can also take this password as RUR, R-U-R-E-R. Of course, in this password, we see only 5 letters, not 6 letters. However, the gist is there, the summary is there. If we see the stages of listening process, first one is hearing, then focusing on the message, then comprehending and interpreting, and then comes analyzing and evaluating, responding, and finally remembering. If we see that in the form of a password, receiving, the first R is receive, the second one is understand, the third one is remembering, the fourth one is evaluating, and the final one is responding. Receive, understand, remember, evaluate, and respond. The 5 stages of listening. What happens in this process of receiving? The sound waves are received by the speaker, or the text or the message is received by the speaker, and then it is understood by the speaker, and then he tries to remember. There is also something called as recall the context, retain the text, reproduce it in the test. So he remembers whatever he has listened, and then he evaluates. He evaluates the message or the text. Finally, he responds. He responds to the message. He reacts to the message. He, provides his opinion about the text or the message. All right? Okay, fine. Well, there are various types of listening. What are those various types of listening? Superficial, appreciative, focused listening, evaluative listening, attentive listening, content listening, critical listening, and empathetic listening. We will also go ahead and see the types of listening. That means we have seen what is listening. We have also seen some good rules of listening. We have seen what are the 5 stages of listening. And then now we are looking at the types of listening. So it is the entire listening story that we are covering in this discussion. Okay, fine. So coming to the first one, there is superficial listening. What happens in this superficial listening? In this type of listening, the listener has little awareness of the content that is being said. So the listener, he has little awareness of the content that is being said. He doesn't actually completely understand the message. It's only superficially listening it. Okay? He has little awareness of the content that is being said. Then the output in this type of listening is 0, because the listener tends to ignore the message and is not able to concentrate on the theme or main points and supporting details of the message. He doesn't focus on the actual main points of the message. He doesn't focus on the supporting details of the message. And then what happens? Superficially, it's only listening on the surface level, at the surface level, not the deeper level of the main points, not the deeper level of the supporting details. So the listening output here is 0. Okay, fine. So one should not be a superficial listener. One should be an active listener in getting connected with the listener, getting connected with the speaker, in understanding the main points, the supporting details. All this should be understood properly. Appreciative listening. What is this appreciative listening? The image that is shown, that is displayed on the slide, speaks volumes about what is appreciative listening. That means the person whom you see on the slide is actually enjoying some music that she is listening. It looks like she is listening to some very melodious, to a melodious song or melodious music. Well, the main purpose of appreciative listening is to get enjoyment and pleasure, derive enjoyment or pleasure. The output may be taking part in the entertainment process. So what is the output of such kind of listening? Maybe you will understand the lyrics. You will enjoy the lyrics of the song. You will try to remember the lyrics of the song, and you will also try to reproduce the lyrics of the song. Okay, contextually, based on the beat, based on the rhythm, based on the music, based on the tune that you love and like, you will try to, retain it. You will try to reproduce it. Okay, fine. Well, appreciative listening is one of the, best listening types that one should practice, especially in terms of language learning process. If you can do this appreciative listening, you can learn English through songs. You can learn English through songs. You can understand the lyrics that are there in the song so that you learn new words. You try to understand the meanings of the words. How is that word used in that context? And you try to use that word in your spoken communication or written communication. You understand what I'm trying to say? So when you do this appreciative listening, you'll enjoy the words that you listen in those lyrics, the words. You'll understand the meanings of those words based on the context or situation. Then you will try to, retain and reproduce it in your spoken or written communication. Okay, fine. Then coming to this focused listening. What is focused listening? Here also you'll see a very interesting image. Well, I have taken these images from Google, even the slides from that. Okay, this is for public, viewing. So I have taken some of these selected slides from Google. Well, it involves listening for specific information. Focused listening involves listening for specific, particular information. Focused listening. This is the most common type of listening that we practice in non-formal oral communicative situations. Non-formal situations are oral communicative situations. For instance, for example, I have a blazing example in this focused listening. You are standing on the railway platform. You are listening to the announcement that is made by the announcer about your train that is going to come on your platform. So how do you listen? Do you listen in a very casual manner, in a very careless manner? No, you do a very focused listening, because you would like to know which platform your train is arriving on. You would like to know what time it is coming. You would like to know what time it departs. Okay, all this fun. You would also like to know, where does your compartment, stand? Where does it come and stand? Or to understand all these things, you will go for focused listening, attentive listening, careful listening, right? So it involves listening for specific or particular information, specific details, particular details. And this is the most common type of listening, okay, that we practice in non-formal or oral communicative situations or contexts. Okay, fine. Evaluative listening. What is evaluative listening? It involves evaluation of the oral message or commentary and developing a line of thought. So it involves evaluation of oral message. You will try to evaluate the message that is delivered maybe in a talk or in a lecture. And the listener interprets and he analyzes what he or she listens in order to understand both the explicit as well as implicit meaning of the oral of the message. What is implicit meaning? What is explicit meaning? Implicit meaning is indirect meaning that is mentioned indirectly in that text or in that lecture or in that talk. Explicit meaning is something that is very clear, that is open, that is easy to understand. So when you do evaluative listening, you try to evaluate the message, the meaning between the lines. For example, when it comes to reading, we say reading between the lines, reading beyond the lines, reading the lines. In the same fashion, here you are listening between the lines. That is, listening for implicit meaning of the lecture that is being said, or explicit meaning of the talk or lecture. Okay. Thus, the main purpose of evaluative listening is to evaluate the content of the oral message to select appropriate information. So, the main purpose of evaluative listening is we evaluate the content of the oral message to select appropriate. So, selectively, we go for appropriate information. Very, very particularly, we go for relevant, suitable, apt, or appropriate information, so that the unnecessary information, is filtered, and then the necessary information, important information, is properly understood, is properly analyzed, evaluated. Okay, fine. Even retained and remembered, reproduced. Attentive listening. What is this attentive listening? What is the difference between attentive listening and the other types of listening? It demands the complete attention of the listener. It demands the complete attention of the listener, which is mentioned in the name itself. It is basically active and intelligent listening in situations such as group discussions, meetings, job interviews, and so on. Well, here also the image. I've taken these slides exclusively for these images, which are very interesting, more than that of the content. Okay, fine. So this kind of attentive listening happens in job interviews. It happens in group discussions. It happens in formal meetings, workplace meetings, because you cannot do casual listening there, or you cannot do some, casual kind of listening. No, you should be very attentive, because you also need to take down the points. There might be even minutes of the meetings that are written at the end of at the meeting. Action needs to be taken based on the discussions that take place in the meeting. Therefore, one should be attentive. Hence, one should be active and intelligent in such kinds of, listening situations or listening contexts. Okay, fine. The listener pays attention to all parts of the message, that is, the central idea, main points, supporting details, examples, and illustrations. He pays attention to everything that is mentioned. The central idea of the listening process, main points of the listening process, supporting details, examples, and illustrations. Okay. Content listening. What is this content listening? In our process, so far we have seen attentive, evaluative, focused, appreciative, superficial. Beginning from superficial, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5, and this is the 6th one that we are listening to. Content listening. It is to understand and retain the speaker's message. It is to, retain and reproduce the speaker's message. You may ask questions, but basically information flows through the speaker, from the speaker to you. It doesn't matter that you agree or disagree, approve or disapprove, only that you understand. So here, most of this content listening happens by receiving that message from the speaker. So therefore, there are not much of agree or disagree takes place here. Not much of approve or disapprove takes place here. It is mostly you receive the information from the speaker. Coming to critical listening. What is this critical listening? It is to understand and evaluate the meaning of the speaker's message on several levels. What is that? When the purpose is to accept or reject the message or to evaluate it critically. For example, listening to a salesperson before making a purchase involves critical listening. Similarly, when you read a book with the objective of writing book review, you do critical listening. You see, the two examples are very clear, crystal clear here. First one is, the salesperson is demonstrating his device or gadget and is trying to influence or impress you. You, in order to take a decision whether to buy that gadget or device or not to buy that gadget or device, you will do critical listening. That means you will listen to his demonstration very carefully. You will listen to his explanation very carefully. Then you will decide whether to, buy that gadget or device or not. In the same fashion, even a book, for example, here when it comes to book review, similarly, when you read a book with the objective of writing book review, that means we are comparing listening and reading, which are receptive skills, when compared to speaking and writing, which are productive skills. So, in both the cases, for example, in the second case, you actually read the book because you are planning to write a review of the book. What is that book? What goes into that? What are the highlights of it? What is that you like the most? All that. To write the review about it, you read it. In the same fashion here, when a salesperson is trying to demonstrate his product, you will try to do critical listening. Okay, fine. Empathetic listening, one of the most important, listening types of listening. What is this empathetic listening? When we listen to a distressed friend, here also you will see a beautiful message over there that speaks volumes about what this empathetic listening is. When we listen to a distressed friend, who wants to share his feelings, we provide emotional and moral support in the form of empathetic listening. We try to provide that, moral support. Or we try to provide that, emotional support to the person who is narrating his sad story of affairs, as, tale of woes or tale of problems. Fine. When psychiatrists listen to their parents, their listening is classified as empathetic listening. When psychiatrists are specialists, they deal with the different kinds of, psychological problems. He's a specialist or a master and an expert in terms of psychology. So psychiatrists, when they listen to their patients, their listening is classified as empathetically. That means they actually try to feel what the speaker, what the patient, what the sufferer is trying to narrate, what the sufferer or what the person is trying to narrate. They try to connect with them. They try to empathize with them. And that's the reason that's where we say, I know, I understand, I can understand, I can feel what you're trying to say. That means maybe a sad story of affairs. We try to empathize with them. We try to comfort them, console them. Okay, we try to tell them, take heart, don't, not a problem, not a problem. Every problem has a solution. Okay, cheer up, cheer up. These kinds of things. That means when you're trying to provide that mental support, emotional support, moral support, then you do empathetic listening. Okay, fine. Now, here we have seen so far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 types of listening. So when we have seen these 8 types of listening, the most important concept comes here. That is, what are the barriers to listening? That means to understand the barriers to listening properly, we should understand the process of listening, the definition of it, the rules of it, the types of it. Now comes the most important part, that is barriers to listening. What is that? Physical barriers. Physical barriers consist of any sound that prevents a person from being heard. Physical noise interferes with a speaker's ability to send messages, and with an audience's ability to receive them. Examples are whispers, cheers, passing cars, or intercom interruptions. All these things. These are physical barriers. People whispering is a physical barrier. For example, people, imagine they are grumbling or murmuring, especially for a teacher who teaches in the classroom. Okay, we know that better, especially about the physical barrier. They repeatedly say, don't talk, keep quiet, focus on this. What happens is, there is one beautiful saying in English language. Silence gives you mental strength. Patience gives you emotional strength. I repeat, silence provides the mental strength that is required to do the skill that we are doing, to whatever that we are doing, to do it successfully. Okay? And at the same time, patience gives you, silence gives you mental strength. Patience gives you emotional strength. So, by the patience, we derive that emotional strength to focus on whatever we are doing properly and to give 100% to that. Therefore, in this physical barrier, whispers, cheers, passing, maybe cars that are passing by, the physical noise of the vehicles, or intercom interruptions, maybe, phones or mobile phones. All these are physical barriers. Even a fan that is producing a very weird sound, okay, or any of these things, physical barriers. So one should fight to overcome those barriers, to do focused listening, to do active listening, so that the message is properly understood, so that the process of listening is properly done. Okay, fine. Physiological barriers. What are these physiological barriers? People-related barriers, physiological barriers. Physiological barriers arise when the listener suffers from ill health. For example, the person has some, poor health, sickness. That's a physiological barrier. Maybe headache, stomachache, fever. Okay, that's a physiological barrier. Fatigue. He's, damn tired, very tired, exhausted. Okay. Maybe because sleeplessness. The next word is that sleeplessness. So generally what happens, doctors say that old cells are replaced by freshless cells when we, come out of a bed, when we get out of our bed after a good night's sleep. So sleeplessness is a physiological barrier. Similarly, hearing problems and the like. These are all physiological problems. It may also arise due to the accent and pronunciation shortcomings of the speaker. For example, one Australian speaking to an Indian. Have you come here to die? This Australian, Michael, is speaking to the Indian, Raju, who went to Australia on the first day of his job. Have you come here to die? Indian was shocked. He was taken aback. What is this man asking? This is the first day I'm going to start my job and he's asking me, have you come here to die? Well, all that the Australian wants to, ask Raju, Michael wants to ask Raju is, have you come here today, not to die? Whereas the pronunciation is something like to die, to die. You see, that means pronunciation matters, accent matters, and that can become a physiological barrier. Therefore, we should pay special attention to our pronunciation when we produce sounds. We should overcome the influence of mother tongue. We should sound like a neutral English language user, communicator, or speaker, so that the opposite person cannot identify, cannot recognize what my or what our mother tongue is. Okay, fine. Psychological barriers. What are these psychological barriers? Well, they cover the value system and the behavioral aspects. Some examples where listening fails to be effective on account of people-related factors are: the speaker speaks in a shrill voice that does not reach the receiver. That means the voice is not properly audible. Voice is not audible. The speaker speaks very rapidly or with an accent that is not clear. That means either the speaker is speaking too fast or it can also be too slow. Too slow also it might put the listeners off. The interest is lost in the process of listening. Therefore, as a speaker, one should ensure that the speed is moderate. It is neither very fast nor very slow. At the same time, the voice should be audible. The voice should reach to the last row, last person who is sitting there in the audience. So these can be, that means, the poor voice, inaudible voice, and then the accent or very fast speaking can be psychological barriers that might put the listener off, that might switch off the process of listening. So yes, psychological barriers is one of the barriers that we study in this listening process. Okay, fine. Overload of the message can also be a barrier. That means giving too much information. Technical jargon is using technical words, but heavily loaded with information is also, information overload that can be a barrier too. It is difficult for the brain to digest the overloaded message. Okay. When the message is lengthy or illogical in sequencing, it becomes more painful to retain the concentration. Imagine the information is too lengthy, okay, or it is too illogical in sequencing, in arranging it in a proper fashion about introduction, body, conclusion, and other things. It becomes very painful to retain that, or to concentrate on what is being said, to recall, to retain, and to reproduce. As a result, listening becomes ineffective, inefficient. So information overload can also be one of the barriers to listening. One should be careful in the speaker, in fact, should be very careful about the volume of the message that is being given to the listener. Okay, fine. And finally, ego, one of the most important aspects of barriers to listening. Well, when it comes to ego, thinking that my own ideas are more important than those of other person, or I am always right and the other person is wrong, is the major stumbling block in the way of listening. So we should never sit there in the process of listening that I know everything and what does the opposite person know? This thing is not at all, it is not a proper way of listening. Listening requires open mind and heart-free from negative emotions. Heart-free from negative emotions. If the mind is closed for the other person's message, there will be no listening. That means when you listen to the opposite person, when the mind is closed, when it is closed listening, then, there will be no listening. That means, the person who is receiving the message should do, open-minded listening. It should not be, closed listening. It should be broad-minded listening. Broad-minded listening. And ego is one of the biggest barriers in the process of listening. So one should overcome this process of ego. Only then we can receive ideas, welcome ideas. We can, always build our knowledge, develop our knowledge. Okay. And, the opposite of ego is like, you humble yourself. You try to sit there with a kind of clean mind, with an empty mind, so that, from every person, from every individual, there is something that you learn. All of us know something. Each of us know something. Therefore, let us learn from one another. Therefore, let us grow as a team, Okay. We always learn from one another. So we should never ever think that I know everything, that I is the biggest danger. Okay, fine. So with that, yes, we have come to the end of this discussion. Let me give you a recapitulation of what is that we have done so far. We have seen the definition of listening. What is listening? Listening is a receptive skill. Listening is, listening attentively without deviations, distractions, focused listening, active listening. When we compare listening with hearing, then we can define listening in a very, very nice fashion. Hearing, for example, when a railway engine is passing by, sounds fall on my eardrum. That is hearing. Whereas listening, for example, listening to a lecture, listening to a job interview, listening to the discussion of a meeting, that is listening. Listening carefully, listening attentively, listening in a focused manner. That is listening. We have seen various types of listening, such as superficial listening, appreciative listening, empathetic listening, active listening, focused listening, critical listening, evaluative listening. Okay, we have seen various, types of listening so far. And in the discussion that we had just now, various kinds of listening that we have seen, such as superficial listening, appreciative, focused listening, evaluative listening, attentive listening, content listening, critical listening, empathetic listening. And when we have brought this discussion to an end, we have looked at barriers to listening, which are very important to know. Because when we know the barrier, then we will think about overcoming that barrier so that the process of listening is fruitful, productive, and result-oriented. Right. Okay. Physical barriers, we have looked at physical barriers such as, noise is a physical barrier. We have also seen physiological barriers such as ill health, sickness, or fatigue, tiredness, sleeplessness. We have looked at psychological barriers such as, inaudible voice or speaking very fast, overload of the message, which is one of the barriers, ego, one of the, important barriers of communication. And, let us say a no to this ego. Let us be broad-minded and let us learn from one another. And these are the rules of good listening that we, discussed in the beginning about, removing distractions or be patient or empathizing, note-taking in the process of listening. I hope the discussion has been useful, to all our viewers. So be a focused listener, attentive listener, overcome the barriers of listening, barriers to listening. Okay. And be a focused listener, active listener and attentive listener so that, your listening process becomes fruitful, productive and result oriented. Thank you for watching. Keep watching IARE YouTube. I am Sunil Solomon Philip. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.